There was before you and there was during you. For some reason, I never thought there would be an after you. That's from this book. Of all the Colleen Hoover books, I never thought it was gonna be this book. Let me repeat. There was before you and there was during you. For some reason, I never thought there would be an after you. I thought that book was gonna be an after you, not reminders of him. What? I've heard that quote all over TikTok and Instagram, everywhere. I never thought it was gonna be about a girl who killed her boyfriend while drunk driving. Never thought that's what that quote was gonna be about. This book is sad. It is sad that she killed her boyfriend while drunk driving. I do not mean to make light of a DUI, deadly DUI, but I'm sorry, the melodrama from that quote going with this book is a little bit ending me. I just read the next 4 pages after that quote, and the next funniest part is she reads about how her boyfriend died while she was drunk driving to his best friend, says that, the melodrama, and they immediately have sex. I've been horny, but never that horny. I'm literally laughing. But also, I do want her to be reunited with her daughter. I do want that for her. Even if she did do the deed with her dad's best friend after explaining how she killed her dad to her, you know, I'm not sure anyone deserves to hook up with anyone after that. Okay, serious note. I finished my first Colleen Hoover book. It did make me cry. It was melodramatic. Was it more melodramatic than any other romance novel I've ever read? No. Did it have weird prose in the middle of it that made it seem more melodramatic? Yes, but the plot, not more melodramatic than any Regency romance I've ever read. It just feels weird because it's set in a modern time. But in the Regency era, when I read a Regency novel and there's a guy sleeping with his best friend's sister or best friend's girlfriend, and he died in a war with Napoleon, I don't think anything of it. It's only when they died in a car crash in thousands, in the 2000s, that it's weird. When it happens in the 1810s on the battlefields in France, it's just history. Anyway, so yeah, it's melodramatic, but it did make me cry at the end because it was a happy ending. It made me feel things. It's not the best literature that was ever written. It's very simplistically written, I will say that. I'll probably have more thoughts after I read another book. I'm curious if the writing will be different in a different novel, and if it will vary character-wise, writing style-wise. Now that I've read the quote that I've heard all over social media, I'm interested in what other quotes I will recognize. I did think that quote would be in a book called It Ends With Us, because it sounds like it goes with the title It Ends With Us, but apparently it's not in that book. It's in this book. Anyway, so that was news to me, but that's been an update from yours truly. I was not expecting to start my Colleen Hoover vlog now, tonight, of all nights, and I wasn't expecting it to start so chaotically with me just gagging over this quote. So, you're welcome. We'll hope to have more cohesive thoughts going forward, and I need to film a better intro, so we will work on that. See y'all later. Do I know what the next book is? Oh, I'm getting these books from the library, but this book my neighbor read and gave to me, so. And then she straight up, she was like, I'm not keeping that book. You can do whatever you want with it when you're done with it. So I'm gonna figure out something creative to do with my first Colleen Hoover book. Hello, I have now read 2 more Colleen Hoover books, and so far, I applaud this woman for being a millionaire, but I don't understand what is the death grip she has on the book industry. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the 2 books I read. Actually, so far, Reminders of Him has at least been the better of the 3 books I've read, and it might be because it's the latest book and maybe she is improving, but some of these books feel like torture. I read November 9th yesterday, and oh my goodness, this book was horrible. Okay, I love the notes I took on it because I feel like the notes explain so well what I thought. So I'm gonna check out my notes. You have 10 notes and 7 highlights. This paragraph, which was on 8% into the book, so chapter 2. I seem to have a one-track mind, and that track leads straight to the 2 things I shouldn't be thinking about right now. Her boobs. If both of them. I'm pathetic, but if we're just going to sit here and stare at each other, it'd be nice if she was showing a little cleavage instead of wearing this long sleeve shirt that leaves everything to the imagination. It's pushing 80 degrees out here. She should be in something a lot less convent-inspired. Apparently, if you're not showing your boobs, you look like you're in a convent. And then all I wrote in my note on that was WTF, because that is literally all I could think about was who allowed this man to think like this and claim that he is a romantic hero. I don't think he's a hero. He's a villain in this book. If you've never read November 9th, you are not missing out. This man is trash. Another paragraph. My mother raised me with more tact, but what my mother failed to teach me is that there would be girls like this one who would test those manners merely by existing. And I wrote, who allowed a man to blame his mom like this? Come on, why are we blaming your mom for your lack of maturity? I just cannot stand this man's internal monologue or the things he says out loud. So another paragraph. The first time you walked past me before I interrupted your lunch date with your father, I stared at your ass the whole time you were stomping away. And I couldn't help but wonder what kind of panties you had on. That's all I thought about the entire time you were in the restroom. Were you a thong girl? Were you going commando? Because I didn't see an outline in your jeans that hinted you were wearing normal panties. I wrote, you would have to bury me with those thoughts. I read a lot of romance, and normally it doesn't bother me that they're men. Normally I can get, normally they're great people, and I can be not attracted to men and still think a male character is fantastic. Mr. Knightley. From Emma, I'm looking right at you, but the men in these books, in Colleen Hoover's books, what is wrong with them? These are the villains in most novels, and somehow they're the romance heroes in these novels. One time, okay, 18% into the book, he was talking to his friend Kyle, his brother maybe, I don't remember, and then Kyle was like, oh, you don't do girlfriends, when he said he had a girlfriend, and I'm like, you're 18, how does he not do anything? He's 18, he hasn't done anything. Of course he doesn't do girlfriends, but everybody's learning to do new things when they're 18, so I don't understand why Kyle was like, you don't do girlfriends, when he said he had a girlfriend. This sentence, 19% into the book. There's just enough showing at her neckline to keep me good and happy, but I'm not even positive I'll be able to look away from her face long enough to stare at her cleavage. You should not be talking to her if you cannot think, I won't be able to look at her in the eyes because of her cleavage. You don't deserve the conversation with this person. And I wrote, is this a real thought? Because I could not imagine it. Also, I didn't realize I needed to highlight to see the paragraphs in Goodreads. So sometimes I just wrote a note and it shared to Goodreads, but it didn't share the highlighted portion of the book. And I am not re-downloading the book from the library because I already returned it on my Kindle because I do not want that cursed bit of English language back on my phone. But one time she commented, I don't have the exact quote, but 32% of the book, Colleen Hoover likes to write characters who constantly say the guy they're dating is so funny, he's so funny, he's so funny, he keeps making me laugh. And she's like, oh, you're so funny to him at one point, and I wrote, she apparently doesn't meet many funny people because not a single thing that this character said in the story made me even smile. It was not funny. Also, Colleen Hoover has a fetish for virginity. I'm not joking. She's constantly talking about how this is the first person they've had sex with. I'm a virgin, blah, blah, blah. And then at one point, the main character in the story in November 9 is like, you're the first person I've ever had sex with and I want you to be the last. And I just wrote in the first person you've ever had sex with is your last? Tons of question marks, because if that was me, I would not be happy. If I was only having sex with the first person I ever had in my life, I would have joined the convent by now. I did highlight this paragraph. Seconds turn into minutes, fingers turn into hands, teasing turns into torture, torture turns into unimaginable pleasure. I mean, that's a pretty set of words, but it doesn't forgive the unimaginable nature of this character. 59% into the book. This isn't how I meant for her to find out. I was going to tell her, and soon, but I wanted to ease her into it. Not that I expected her to be heartbroken over the fact that I'm dating Jordan. Oh, he was dating some random person that he shouldn't have been dating at that point in the book. And I wrote, so how did you mean for her to find out? If you didn't want this to be the way she found out, how did you mean for her to find out? Explain. Because there was no evidence that you would let her find out a different way at all. I have other thoughts, but I'm going to combine them all into one. I have other thoughts on November 9, but I'm going to combine them because I think they apply to all of the books that I've read so far by Colleen Hoover. I have 7 notes and 5 highlights from Ugly Love. The 7% into the book, we have this going on. She looks at me and smiles again, taking the only empty seat all the way across the room. Her eyes tell me she already knows she's mine. It's just a matter of time. And I wrote, what is going on in the House of Commons? Because I've never looked at a human being. I've never even met a human being who's looked at another human being, and for the first time they met, they thought, they're mine. I have met an older person who told me the first time he saw his wife that he was like, oh, I'm gonna marry her. Not, I'm going to own her. She's mine. Like, I look back at 12% into the book. I look back at Rachel. Rachel looks at me. I can't fall in love with you, Rachel. Her eyes are sad. My thoughts are sadder. And you can't fall in love with me. She slowly walks inside, avoiding my gaze as she watches her feet with each step. They're the saddest steps I've ever seen taken. I closed the door. It's the saddest door I've ever had to close. And I wrote, you have not closed many doors, buddy. Also, at 25% into the book, I wrote just a little Acephobia because he said he didn't need sex, and the main character girl goes, everybody needs sex, it's a human need, you can't live without it. And I was like, that's aphobic. So I don't think Colleen Hoover knows any ace demisexual people or anybody on the asexual spectrum. Just a heads up. Another virginity fetish moment where the main girl is like, I wish I was a virgin for him. I do not understand people writing that into stories. We've had decades of purity culture, centuries of purity culture. In fact, we love feminism. Why are you hating on it? 33% of the book. This is a plot point that they don't seem to understand what casual sex is. He probably thinks all my days go something like this. Random guy. Do you want to have sex? Me. Let me finish up and I'll be right over. By the way, I don't have any rules, so anything goes. Random guy. Awesome. I'm confused. And I wrote this. Bro, I'm confused. Well, like, in this world, does Tinder and hookups not exist? Because this guy is like, the main character dude is like, I am never falling in love. I just want to have sex. But because I can't fall in love, I won't have sex. And he does it for 6 years until he meets this girl. Is Tinder not exist in San Francisco? He's a pilot. He's flying all over the freaking world. Why is he not doing random hookups where he flies places? You're only there 1 or 2 nights. That's perfect for a person who never wants to fall in love. But anyway, 34% in the book. He says, the first flight is short. Besides, I'm a co-pilot. I'll sleep on the plane. Are co-pilots allowed to sleep while the plane is flying? I really genuinely did not know, so I highlighted it to look up, and I will look it up. Not at the second, but I'm going to look it up. 45% in the book. As much as I want to believe he's being sincere with his compliment, I frown down at the scrubs I've been wearing for 12 hours straight. I'm wearing Minnie Mouse scrubs. He leans into me again until our shoulders are touching. I've kind of always had a thing for Minnie Mouse, he says quietly. That was cute, but why is she saying that she's not pretty because she's wearing Minnie Mouse scrubs? What I'm trying to say is, why are Colleen Hoover's characters so determined to not accept a single compliment that the other characters give them? Like, why are these girls always like, I'm ugly, when the guy is like, oh, you're so hot, I'm ready to like have sex in the coat room closet right now, and they're like, I'm ugly, I'm wearing Minnie Mouse sweats. What? Okay. So those were the notes I wrote down while I was reading, and as you could see on Ugly Love, I only wrote notes up to 45% of the book because I just sat down on my bed over here. I read the whole rest of the book and I wanted to roll my eyes. I was like, ugh. Oh. So here's some quick thoughts. Colleen Hoover does weird frickin' plots. Like, weird frickin' plots. So something I've noticed is there's no female friends in the stories. Like, the female characters never have friends. Only the male love interests seem to have friends in their life. And as I was reading Ugly Love, something I thought about was, like, this girl's a nursing graduate student. did she not make a single friend outside of her brother her entire life? That's just something I thought about. I just think that's a really interesting plot hole in these stories. Or maybe a world building hole is these girls the main characters never seem to have friends outside of the guys that they meet. And then they become friends with the guys' friends. It's just kind of a weird thing I noticed. Another thing is the way that Colleen Hoover kills off the people around the main characters is just wild. And so unnecessary and really over the top. It doesn't seem realistic at all to have a guy's 2-day-old baby die on the way home from the hospital. That just seemed a little weird. And then and it's because I've read so many books in a row. If I was only read one Colleen book here and there, then maybe I wouldn't be like, oh, these plots are over the top. But when you read several in a row, they do become, you know that there's going to be some shit pulled out of a magic hat halfway through the story to let you know trauma. Like, it's just like trauma porn in a way, but in a way to like excuse shitty behavior is what it feels like. And sometimes it feels realistic, like, oh, that could happen to someone. But other times, like in November 9, I've never thought I'm gonna go burn down a house because I think that my mom killed herself over a man. And then the girl that I fall in love with lives in that house, and I'm gonna stalk her until she falls in love with me and then let her know I burned down her house and caused third-degree burns over 40% of her body. Like, if that happened in real life, that boy would be going to jail. Not marrying the girl of his dreams. So I'm just a little exhausted with that. So the best plot, I will say, even though it has major problems, the best plot so far was Reminders of Him, because at least in Reminders of Him it felt fairly grounded in reality until like 90% of the book, and then the parents read the letter and they're like, oh, we forgive her, we love her, even though she literally left their son to die. And I don't understand how she walked 10 miles up the road away from a wreck after drinking and driving, how she walked like miles and miles away, got back to her apartment, and woke up the next morning on the floor without realizing what she'd done. Like, that part didn't line up, but at least 70% of the book was entertaining and the plot wasn't so far-fetched that I wanted to chuck the book out the window. But for November 9 and Ugly Love, the plot just... I could tell the whole time, especially with Ugly Love, that I was going to hate the plot twist. And at this point, it's not a plot twist, it's a plot speed bump, because all it is like, yeah, there's trauma sprinkled in and we're gonna look away and continue with this romance. I really would like Colleen Hoover to write regular romance that doesn't have to be over the top trauma porn. I think if she just wrote about two regular people having a regular life, maybe it would be interesting, because the fake conniving of circumstances to make these men have more tragic backstories than they already have is really not doing it for me. But I'm kind of interested in her other books that are not romance. So far, very few of them are available from the library. Like, I want to read Verity. It doesn't seem that it's available. I want to read The Last of Us. No, that's the zombie movie TV series. One of Us is left, or something. The one that's not a romance, but people romanticize it. Because it would be interesting to read books that are not romances from her, because she does have an engaging writing style. It's just a little tedious to read these men's horrible thoughts and romanticize an 18-year-old talking about a woman's boobs at a random restaurant that he can't look away from. Not really romantic to me. But that is our midweek check-in. We will check in later. I don't know when, alligator, but we'll see ya. And yeah. Wish me luck for my next Colleen Hoover read. Okay, friends, I went to the library today. Please clap. And I picked up this book. It is Regretting You by Colleen Hoover. And this is the first day in my week of Colleen Hoover, which will not be a full week because I'm not lasting 7 days doing this. It will just be like 4.5, 5 days. So my 5 days of Colleen Hoover, this is the first time I have not read the book before 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Most of the time I start it as soon as I get home from work at around 3:30. I sit down and I read it between 3:30 and 5, and thank God it normally takes me less than 2 hours. Starting it this late in the evening, a little bit frustrating because that means I'm procrastinating because I don't want to read it, and I'm literally only reading it for the vlog. Please watch this video. Please help me make money on YouTube so that I can have money after I pay my rent next. Fun fact, last night I said I did not have the book that is very, very popular all over Book Talk, but I am not freaking joking when I say that as soon as I finished filming that, it showed up in my notifications. My notifications were like, It Ends With Us. I keep wanting to call it The Last of Us. It Ends With Us is now available at your library. You can have it. So now I have It Ends With Us on Kindle. I think I will read this one on Friday. Today is Thursday, so I'm gonna read this one so I don't feel like being on my phone. So I'm gonna sit down and read this library book, and it's only the second hardcover or whatever non-Kindle edition for my vlog. But I definitely jinxed myself by saying I wasn't gonna have to read It Ends With Us because it wasn't available. And then after being on hold for 6 weeks, it became available moments after I said I was not gonna read it. So now I have to read it, but here we go. We're gonna do some reading. So something I've noticed about Colleen Hoover's books is none of her main characters are on birth control. I just think that's interesting. The guys will use condoms, but the girls are never on birth control. And I just find that fascinating. I don't know if it says, maybe it goes along with her seeming virginity fetish or maybe latent purity culture written into the stories. But something I just noticed, like the minute this book starts, we have a pregnancy scare, and I don't know where the book is going, so maybe it's real, maybe it's not. But I'm thinking, why are none of the characters in her book ever on? In all of the books I've read by her, none of her characters are ever on birth control, and I just find that really fascinating. So it makes me curious about her beliefs regarding reproductive freedom. Just something I've noticed. Does reading 5 Colleen Hoover books in 5 days make me book daddy? Does it? Does it? My doggo thinks so, and her opinion is the only opinion that matters. Right, Amy? Mommy's your book daddy, huh? You're not allowed to judge me because I look like this, because number one, I had to read 5 Colleen Hoover books in 1 week, less than 1 week, and I was at work at 2 a.m. and it is, let's check the clock, it is 4:52. I came home, I took a nap, I didn't put on makeup, I barely did my hair. This is the low-key Elizabeth, and I've decided to film outside because I thought y'all needed to change your pace, and I think it's gonna storm, so we're gonna have a little change of pace and try to talk about Colleen Hoover before it storms. Okay, do I not look gay? That's the goal. Do I look gay enough? All right. I read It Ends With Us, and that is the end of my journey with Colleen. It ends with us. Thank you, Colleen. So all the other books I read by Colleen, yes, they had some underlying messaging that I didn't necessarily think was healthy. I thought there was a hyper focus on virginity and soulmates that I thought could be construed as purity culture, especially from someone who grew up in purity culture. But It Ends With Us has a lot of toxic messaging that I truly think actually can harm readers, and I did not appreciate. First, major shout out for a good thing in the book. For the first book that I read by Colleen Hoover, a major character was not killed off in a car crash. Imagine, you can kill people other ways. Was it a heart attack, this book? I'm not really sure. I also want to give a trigger warning right here for discussions of domestic violence, suicide, and sexual violence. The first thing that I noted in the very first page, and this is not an indictment of Lily's character, this is an indictment of how Colleen writes, and I want to actually read my notes on Goodreads. One of the first things that Lily thinks in the story is, do they look at the ground as it rushes toward them and think, well crap, that was a bad idea? Somehow I think not. And Lily is referring to attempting suicide, and I initially wrote, maybe Google this information, because every reliable study of people who have survived such attempts shows instant regret. And then I later clarified, Lily doesn't have to necessarily know this is an inaccurate and dangerous depiction of suicide, but the author freaking does. An author with a platform as wide as Colleen Hoover should not casually make assumptions about suicide attempts when countless studies have shown that those who make an attempt and survive that attempt express instant regret in the aftermath. It's irresponsible as a writer and downright dangerous. I have read numerous studies as a journalist where the glorification of like instant peace when you commit suicide actually harms people, and the reliable studies have shown that people who, let's give an example, have tried to end their life by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, that the moment they jumped, that they instantly regretted it, and those who have survived it, let's say a manatee helped bring them to safety, which is a story I read. It was kind of shocking that they like actually, that no one talks about the instant regret. And I think a character in the very first page of a book with a reader base as broad as Colleen Hoover has, assuming that people who commit suicide don't regret it, is very, 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 very dangerous, especially for a book that deals with intense mental health topics and domestic violence. So I immediately, that was a big no. Alright, I did try to take notes. I even wrote some in my notes app and highlighted. So we have lots of notes for this book. 4% into the story, it says, Ryle looks over at me with a thoughtful expression. Lily, he says pointedly, I would like to know what a thoughtful expression looks like. Colleen never describes what a thoughtful expression is. She always says it's thoughtful without showing us. And then another 4% into the book, Ryle says, there's no such thing as bad people. We're all just people who sometimes do bad things. I was like, red flag. I know Lily is a botanist, not a philosopher, but I do think it is important to say there could be such a thing as no bad people. There are always consequences of people's actions, and this book wants to say consistently is a theme is Lily remembering Ryle saying this and wanting to excuse people's behavior for the harm they're doing to her, because there's no such thing as bad people. But saying there's no such thing as bad people does not excuse the consequences of real people's actions. And I think having an abusive person in the story state that, and then Lily as a character constantly repeat it to herself and trying to show him grace, is very, very dangerous and irresponsible as a author. I do not think there's a single excuse for such behavior. 5% into the book, he pulls up his, she asks him to say what he's thinking. He pulls his hand behind his head and looks me straight in the eye. I want to fuck you. Why does Colleen make, I literally wrote this, why does Colleen make all of her men unimaginably predictable? And of course Colleen's character Lily replies, well, I'm not into one-night stands. And then I wrote, but of course Colleen loves to sprinkle in characters who say this without sharing a single reason why. All of them want to have sex, but for some reason Hoover seems averse to the very idea that they can enjoy a one-night stand. And Lily says she wants a husband in the future, but one-night stands don't take away from a husband in the future. So I don't understand why she would say no to a one-night stand, because she could still date seriously and have one-night stands. Like, I don't understand. I was literally guessing the plot. And keep in mind, I have not been spoiled for the story. I didn't know a single thing about it. Oh, here are my note tabs. It ends with us are hilarious. I wrote, it ends with us. Someone named Lily Blossom Bloom would really be stupid to hire the first person she met, which is literally what happens. And then she offers her $10 an hour in Boston. And she doesn't know that the girl she's offering a job to is a millionaire, but that's beside the point. You're offering a sub-livable wage in Boston. Sorry, Lily Blossom Bloom. I don't support it. You bought a building without a business plan. You are Miss Brilliant Blossom Bloom. Oh my gosh, and then I wrote, she broke her ankle. She actually sprained it, but at this point I was like, oh, it's definitely broken. That's part of the plot. And then I was like, oh, they're gonna take her to the hospital and she's gonna meet Ryle. But it turned out he was her like new employee's brother, so she just brought the neurosurgeon. And then I literally wrote, how dare she write a redhead named Lily? That is so overdone. Literally, at this point in the story. So she meets Atlas. She's going to end up with Atlas. Colleen Hoover has such a thing for first sex guys being in game. It's part of Colleen's virginity fetish. Okay, 19% into the book. He pushes off the door and stands up straight. He half turns, heading for the hallway, but then suddenly drops to his knees in front of me. He wraps his arm around his waist, which I'm like thinking, how short does she have to be for him to be on his knees and his arms around her waist? His arms are not around her knees. She has to be really, really short, or he has to be freaking 5,000 feet tall to be able to wrap his arms around her waist from his knees. Like, the logistics are not logisticking. Anyway, he wraps his arms around my knees. Please, Lily, he says through self-deprecating laughter, please have sex with me. He's looking up at me with puppy dog eyes and a pathetic, hopeful grin. I want you so, so bad, and I swear once you have sex with me, you'll never hear from me again. I promise. There's something about a neurosurgeon literally on his knees begging for sex that does me in. That's pretty pathetic. Yeah, pretty pathetic. Why are you hooking up with a guy who you literally said is pretty pathetic? What is wrong with women? 21% into the book. She shows up at a party to make Ryle jealous with a gay man. Devin, I slap his hand away and he laughs. Relax, Lily. I've touched way better boobs than yours and I'm still gay. Ah. The thing about Colleen Hoover is anytime she like sprinkles in gay characters, they are worse than a stereotype. They're worse. And also the thing about Colleen Hoover is she's unable to write friendships in a book if they don't serve the romance of the story. So like Lily makes friends, but her only friend is her abusive husband's sister. And the gay guy who shows up to make the abusive boyfriend nervous, jealous, and then never shows up again. Explain that, Colleen. Explain that. Oh, another 22% into the book. Devin says, Lily, like my name is a disappointment. What? You look like you're about to puke. You really like him. Okay, and I wrote, so 2 books Colleen wrote where characters say the other character looks like they're about to puke when they want to kiss someone. I'm like thinking, okay, I'm kissing and puking. How does that work? Why are you looking like you're about to puke when you want to kiss someone? So 24% into this book, I'm not gonna read the whole freaking thing at the party. It's really long, but I highlighted it all to remember it. So Ryle is jealous. He wants to hook up with Lily. So instead he picks her up in front of everyone at the party, takes her to his room. He says to herself, I'm so embarrassed. I just press my face against Ryle's chest as he walks me down the hallway and into his bedroom. Everyone in the entire room is staring. So several reviews that I read on Goodreads in trying to formulate my thoughts listed 3 instances where Ryle is abusive towards Lily. And what I find fascinating, so many instances like this that happen that are not listed as abusive. Picking someone up and embarrassing them in front of all of a room of strangers that they don't know and front of, that's abusive. Doing something like that to intentionally embarrass them, because that's what you're doing, is abusive. And I think Colleen is really good at writing a sleazebag, but because she romanticizes it, people don't recognize abuse in the story, which is really unfortunate because, yeah. Unfortunately, it was getting too loud, so I did have to come inside. This is literally unforgivable. You know which part of you drives me craziest? He brings his fingers to my mouth and traces my smile. These, he says, your lips. I love how they're as red as your hair, and you don't even have to wear lipsticks. If my lips were as red as my hair, y'all would be scared. I would be scared. This is not a thing that that's not forgivable. The gaslighting. What happened in the kitchen tonight is something I'm confident won't happen again. Not after seeing how upset he is that he hurt me. All humans make mistakes. What determines a person's character aren't the mistakes we make. It's how we take those mistakes and turn them into lessons rather than excuses. Colleen Hoover, I know you want to pick everyone else by their own bootstraps and tell us to do the same, but you are literally excusing an excuse as something you can pick up by your freaking bootstraps and recover from. Like, oh, it's a mistake, I can be better. What I find very interesting is this is not something that Lily breaks down in the story and is like, oh, mistakes are bad. You can't recover from abusive mistakes. Like, you can't turn them into life lessons and become a better person after you abuse someone. That's not something you can do. But Lily, this philosophy is the story. Lily's like, oh, he's abusive, he's harming me, well, he's gonna be better. And yeah, I'm gonna leave him, but he'll still be a fine father. What? So I didn't write any notes between 52 and 86% of the book because I literally did not have the words to say anything and I just wanted to yell. So I did write a note at 86% into the book when she tells him that she will never forgive him for abusing her. She thought, Lily thinks, I thought if I could hurt him like he had hurt me, I would feel avenged. I don't. Instead, I feel vindictive and mean. I feel like my father. So because your abuser is crying because you said you will never love him again, you are a bad person and you feel vindictive and mean. The way it's set up to have more empathy for the abuser than for his victim is unforgivable. Unforgivable. Well, this book is bad. So some of the plot devices that people on the internet like to point out are the letters to Ellen. That when she was a child, she was writing letters to Ellen as her dad was being abusive. And that was her coping mechanism. I honestly didn't care about that part. It didn't make me mad, it didn't make me happy. I thought it was boring, it was kind of trite, but whatever. I didn't care that she named her daughter, her middle name, after Finding Dory and Dory. If her name is Lily Blossom Bloom, then her daughter's middle name being Dory is the least of our concerns. There's some major red flags with the abusive partner, husband / ex. Number one, when Lily knows she can't stay with him anymore and he shows up and he's like begging her to forgive him and she's like, seriously, like maybe I will forgive him, and he starts to make out with her and he only stops when she's like, oh, I'm enjoying the way he's touching my body, and then all of a sudden I freeze because it reminds me of when he almost choked me and assaulted me. And she freezes, and that's when he stops and he's like, you're never going to be able to have sex with me without being scared of me again. And she's like, yeah, you're right. And he leaves. Excuse me. What was that? Excuse me. Abusive exes don't leave because they're like, oh, you don't enjoy having sex with me anymore. That was trash. Right? That was trash. Absolute trash. Yeah, that is not allowed. And number two, the other second major problem I had is this man has physically assaulted her. He is an emotional abuser and manipulator. He calculated the abuse he was going to do to her, and some people say a couple times he didn't, but the final time that she was like, okay, I have to be done with this man, that was calculated assault. And she is like, well, he's still my child's father and I cannot prevent a man from having legal access to his daughter. Lily Blossom Bloom, you are wrong, and you've just created a message, Miss Colleen Hoover, that abusive fathers deserve access to their children even if they have harmed their partners, their wives or whatever. That is not right. If a father has abused his wife, he does not deserve access to the children. There should be a restraining order and he should have nothing to do with the children's lives. And the message in the story is that he might not be the guy for Lily. Her first love, who she lost her virginity to, is definitely the guy for Lily. And he was abusive because he was jealous, and he's still gonna make a lovely dad in co-parenting. And all I've gotta say is that is evil, dangerous, horrible way to explain introduce domestic violence into a story. Now, some people pointed out to me, because I was like, wow, this book is horrible, Raoul deserves a restraining order, Colleen Hoover needs a restraining order to stop her from writing about this. And some people were like, oh, but she has a sequel that's about like the co-parenting situationship, blah blah blah. This book came out in like 2016. The sequel came out in 2022. So for like 5 years, this horrible story was in the world, and it was not written as though it had a sequel. So for 5 years, people who could have been in abusive relationships read this book, and it subtly and in some ways blatantly romanticizes domestic abuse. I don't care what it says in the sequel. This book is dangerous, it is harmful, it is toxic, it will harm, and I'm sure it has harmed people who have experienced domestic abuse. So that's all I gotta say. Colleen Hoover, you will answer for your crimes. You will. So this was made a part of a bookish collaboration. My video will be linked in the playlist, so I hope you watched all of the videos. I love all the booktubers who created this video. It was really fun. I honestly didn't think I was gonna do it. Like, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like a fun thing I want to do. And then March 20th came around, I was like, oh, okay, dang, I haven't read a Colleen Hoover book from April Fool's. And then I realized it was Monday, April Fool's is Saturday. I was like, I wonder if I could read a book every day and read 5 books and rate them 5 stars. Because if every book is bad and I give them all 1 star, that is 5 stars. So April Fool's. And yeah, I did it. So happy April Fool's to me. Happy April Fool's to you. We're gonna fingers crossed and hope that I can edit this on time. It is Saturday at 5:17 on April Fool's. Will this go up before the end of April Fool's? Your guess is as good as mine. But thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the booktubers who participated in this very fun bookish collaboration. And let me know if you've read Colleen Hoover and what you thought. And don't forget to subscribe to my friends on BookTube. And I will see all of you here next time. Thanks for watching. See ya.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.